Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So I'm a little late getting this to you, but here it is, my October wrap up. So in October I read 8 books and I enjoyed most of them, I have to say. A couple I was a little bit disappointed with though. So let's get right into these. So first up, of course, because it's not in its place of prominence right here, is Autumncrow by Chaney. This is a reread for me and I'm probably going to read this book every Halloween. It's just so cozy. Of course, you guys know that I love this book. I talk about it on repeat and I did a review way back last year and gave it 5 stars. And it's still a 5-star book. I love this little collection of short stories. It's so cozy. It has some really great twist endings. There's some gruesome stuff in here too. So if you haven't checked out Autumncrow yet, I highly recommend that you do. I don't think you're going to be disappointed with it. So that was my first read from this year. And next up is Literally Disturbed, More Tales to Keep You Up at Night Volume 2. And this is by Ben H. Winters. So this is just a thin little book, hardcover. And I was hoping that this one was going to be very much in the scary stories to tell in the dark kind of vein. And I have to say that this is mostly poetry and it was just kind of mediocre, really. It wasn't overly great. I don't think there was one in here that I could pick out for you that I really enjoyed, but the illustrations in this book are fantastic. So I really did enjoy the illustrations, but like I said, the poetry itself is just kind of mediocre. So didn't live up to expectations with this one. Like I said, I was really hoping for something that would kind of rival Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This one didn't quite make it, but I still did give it 3 stars just on account of the illustrations alone. And next up is Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge. And this was such a good little book. It was a fantastic adventure and I really enjoyed the writing style. It was kind of done in the same sort of way as like the Halloween Tree or any of those sorts of books. And the kind of twist, I would say, in the story is really interesting. I had no idea that it was going to go that route, and I have to say that I mainly enjoyed this. I thought it was really well done. So 4 stars for this one. And of course you have this wonderful cover art here of October Boy, and everyone in the town is trying to hunt down October Boy. Just on the same lines of that, if you're new to the channel, the way that I do my wrap-ups, I don't go through the synopsis again of these books. So what I usually do is I'll go through the synopsis of what I'm reading in my monthly TBR, and then when I do my wrap-ups, I talk about the same books, but I just give you my overall thoughts and a star rating. So if you're looking for the synopsis of any of these books, go back and check out the October TBR. And next up I read Clown in a Cornfield by Cesare, and I did a full review of this book on the channel, so I'll have it linked down below. And it was really interesting, the comments that came out of that review video, because like I said, I really enjoyed the slasher story here with the teenagers, and you know, it's very reminiscent of sort of 90s slasher. But I said there was kind of a twist at the end that I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. It wasn't really rubbing me the right way. I think it could have been done better. And it's funny because several people commented down below that they saw that coming a mile away. And I feel almost like, I'm like, did I miss that? Like, am I the only one who didn't see that coming? But I think it was Holly from Holly by Golly Books that said that she didn't see it coming either. So I had a lot of really good conversations with people, and what I really appreciate is that everyone can have differing opinions, but we all just debate about it and we appreciate other people's points of view. So thank you for keeping the comment section on that video really positive. And I think I enjoyed debating about this book more than I enjoyed the book itself. So I gave this book 3.5 stars. I really liked like I said, the slasher story. Once it got going with the killing, it had a really high body count, it had great kill scenes, but there was just one aspect of this that I didn't see it coming, and when it did, I didn't really appreciate it all that much. But that means that next year, I'm going to have to reread this book and see if I can pick up on the clues and the hints that led up to that scene and see if I'll change my mind on it any. So really enjoyed debating about this book and having conversations about this book with people. That was really fun. And next up is Dead Leaves by Kealan Patrick Burke. So this is 9 tales from the witching season, and I enjoyed this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I found the stories were compelling and they were good. They were written well. The only thing that, and this is just, you know, personal experience and of course the time of year and everything, I was looking for something more like Autumncrow that is cozy and has all of those sort of Halloween season feels, and I didn't get that from this collection. And it's not because I didn't enjoy the stories. The stories were good. I thought they were good. I thought they were written well, like I said, but it's just not what I was looking for at the time. So, you know, that's just my thoughts on this book. Let me know down below if you guys have read this one and you kind of know what I'm sort of getting at there. And the last physical book that I read is Thornhill by Pam Smy. And this book, this is another one actually, if you've seen my Q&A, there was a question that asked, what is a book that, you know, you weren't expecting a whole lot from, but you really ended up enjoying? And this would probably fall into that category. I wasn't expecting a whole lot from this book. You know, it's a middle grade sort of ghost story, and that's kind of just all I was expecting from it. But this book is told from a dual timeline, and the one timeline is written by this girl who is in a boarding school, and she doesn't talk very much. She gets bullied a lot. She doesn't get along with her classmates. There's one specific girl in their school who's really mean, and we're learning what's happening through her diary entries. So that's one aspect of the book. So it's not really written as a story, it's just through her diary entries. And then the second part of the book is told completely through illustrations. So this is a heavily illustrated book. And I thought when I picked this up, I was like, oh, these illustrations are really good. You know, the illustrations have to do with, you know, just kind of complementing the story, but it's not. So we have an entire point of view of another girl who moves into a house that's next to the boarding school that the other girl was going to, but it's like years later, and the entire timeline is told through illustrations. And so you're kind of bouncing back and forth between these two timelines, and it was just fantastically done. It's not hard to understand. Like, you know, when I say there's a whole timeline told through illustrations, it's not like it takes a lot of interpretation or anything. It's very straightforward. Of course, this book I believe is a middle grade, and the actual story of what was happening with the girl who was in the boarding school is so sad. I actually cried during this book because she is talking about the bullying that she's experiencing and everything, and it's really fantastic. It's kind of hard to describe, but I think this is probably, besides Autumncrow, was my favorite book of this month. And you know, it's fairly chunky, but I read this book in a day, of course, because there's a lot of illustrations. And if you're looking for something that's kind of a little bit different, I would definitely recommend picking up Thornhill. I got this one through Book Outlet for fairly cheap, but I wouldn't get it on Kindle. I would get it in a physical copy, so of course you can definitely appreciate all of the wonderful illustrations. So 5 stars for Thornhill. This was a really surprising book. And then for the ebooks that I read this month, the first one that I read was Peel Back and See by Mike Thorne. And of course, like I said, he very kindly sent me a copy of this book for review. So I do have a review already up on the channel. This book just came out on October the 29th, and it is a collection of short stories that kind of lead into the weird horror kind of direction, and it's simply fantastic. There's a lot of exploration of mental health and trauma and addiction, and Mike Thorne's writing is just, it has such depth. He does such a good job, and like I said in my review, there's even one story in here that when I think back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, you know, that's not so scary. But the way that he writes the story, it was hitting me in my gag reflex. I was getting totally grossed out. It was freaking me out, and I didn't enjoy that story, but I had an appreciation for the way that it was written and the way that it was portrayed, and that really speaks to this author's style of writing and his talent. So I gave this book 4 stars. If you want to check out the review, I will leave that link down below, along with the review for Clown in a Cornfield, and this is another one that I would highly recommend you guys go check out. And then the last book that I read this month is Candy Coated Murder by Kate Bell, and this is book 1 in the Pumpkin Hollow series. So this book was very comfy cozy. It had, you know, a lot of Halloween feels and all of that, and it had a great mystery where a neighbor had been killed, and now, like, it's in this small town and everybody is gossiping and everybody's pointing fingers and trying to figure out who killed this woman who was not a very nice woman in the community, so everyone kind of had a grudge against her. But the whole time that I was reading this book, it was almost like one of those Hallmark movies, even though it had to do with murder. It was put together like one of those Hallmark movies where, you know, you have this small town and everybody's gossiping, and you have everyone owns like a little shop in the town, and they're all like small business owners, and somebody wants to cancel Halloween, but they're called Pumpkin Hollow for a reason, and it's just, and that's all that I was getting. All that I could picture was this book being like a Hallmark movie. It reminded me very much of the Good Witch movies, and I love those movies, which is funny because I don't like a whole lot of like Hallmark Channel kind of stuff, but they're so cute. And the woman that ends up being murdered right at the beginning, I picture her as the mayor's wife from the Good Witch series. If you've ever seen that, I'll insert a picture here if I can find one. And it was fantastic. I really enjoyed this read. It wasn't anything that was fantastic. It just had all of those cozy feels, all of the Halloween feels, one of those mysteries, and you have a developing romance and the whole thing. I'm giving this one 3.5 stars. I don't think I'm going to continue with the Pumpkin Hollow series. It's just not my thing, even though just during the season I did really enjoy reading something that was very Halloween-y. I think just going forward, I don't think I'm going to continue with the series. But this one, especially if you like those kinds of things, is definitely worth checking out. So there you guys go. That is everything that I read in October. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to give me a thumbs up. Leave me a question or comment down below because you know I love chatting with you guys. But until next time, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.